Hi, and welcome to How Hollywood Works. My name's Jennifer Kurt, and today our guests are Leonard Goldberg, who's a producer, and Sidney Sheldon, who's a famous best-selling novelist. Thank you for being on the show.
Pleasure.
Now, Sidney, you didn't start off writing novels. How did you start?
I came to Hollywood when I was 17 years old, and it was during the Depression, and my mother gave me 3 weeks to get a job here or come back to Chicago, where my home was. And I went around to the studios and asked the policeman at the gates who I saw. I wanted to be a writer. My name was Sidney Sheldon. Who do I see? And the answer was the same from all of them. You don't see anybody. And I couldn't get past those gates, the mythical Hollywood insurmountable gates. But I heard about readers, people who synopsize stories for busy producers like Mr. Goldberg. And I sat down and wrote a synopsis of Steinbeck's marvelous book of Mice and Men, sent it around all the studios, got a job as a reader, and I was set. Then I would get up at 4 o'clock every morning to work on my own original stories. 4 of them did not sell. The 5th one did. Then they all sold, and I was established as a Hollywood writer.
So how did you change your style? I understood then you wrote more mysteries and comedies even.
Well, in those days, I did a lot of movies. I wrote 30 movies and 8 Broadway plays, 250 television scripts for series that I created, and mostly comedy and musicals. And it was when I started writing my first novel that suddenly I started a very melodramatic form. And I don't know why that happened, but all my novels are rather dramatic.
Starting out so young, how did you possibly get your first book published?
Well, I got my first book published when I was 50 years old. And age has nothing to do with that. Francois Sagan was published, I think, at about 16. So you just write, you do the best you can, and when your work is ready, it will either be printed or made into films or put on a Broadway stage.
And is there anybody that you idolized when you first started?
Len Goldberg, yes.
Yes, no, that's very.
Oh, I do. No, he's a very tasteful, good producer. We've worked together in the past, and it's always been a joy. As far as writers or role models, I wish I could write like George Bernard Shaw. That would be it for me. Tom Stoppard, I think, is one of the brightest of the young writers around.
Is that who you idolized when you were first starting?
No, because I started before Tom Stoppard. No, no one in particular. I love Thomas Wolfe, not this generation's Tom Wolfe, but our generation's Thomas Wolfe, who wrote the Web in the Rock, You Can't Go Home Again, and so on.
I'm not familiar with
Well,
these people.
he's, yeah, not too many people today are, which is unfortunate.
That's a shame.
Yeah, but he's a wonderful writer. There are a lot of good writers.
I think people are more into TV and movies, which you have recently, your novels have been changed to.
Yes, all of my novels are being done or have been done as miniseries or have been made as theatrical motion pictures.
How do you feel about that? Do you like doing that?
I don't do it. I sell my books and other people do it. I'm executive producer because in that way I can protect myself to a degree. But if I get involved in the actual production of a miniseries or a movie, you know, I've done that for so many years. And if I do it now, it keeps me from writing a new novel, and I prefer writing novels.
And all of us who read his novels wouldn't like that at all. I would just like to say, Jennifer, if I may, that we're very fortunate in having Sidney Sheldon here today, because this is a man, he would never say this about himself, but on Broadway he has won the Tony Award. In television he has won the Emmy Award. In motion pictures he's won the Academy Award. In the book world he's won the Edgar Award. He is the Haagen-Dazs of the writers.
Very true.
Very tasty.
Very true. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm glad you
Thank
could
you.
be my
I'm
guest
delighted
today.
to be here with both of you.
Yeah. Well, what I really wanted to ask you about was how you started. I'm sure a lot of our people that go to the school are curious about that, you know, upcoming writers themselves.
Well, the advice I would give to writers was advice given by Sinclair Lewis when he won the Pulitzer Prize for Main Street. All of the universities were after him to come and speak to their various classes in writing. And he finally agreed to go to Harvard. The auditorium there was filled with would-be writers, all the people taking the writing classes. And Sinclair Lewis strode out on the stage, and he stood there for 2 minutes without saying a word. There was utter silence as the students waited to hear words of wisdom from the master. And when he spoke, what he said was, "Why aren't you home writing?" And he turned and walked off the stage. And that's the best advice anyone can give a writer. First of all, every writer should read a lot. And then they should write and keep writing and not get discouraged. I was on a panel show for universities the other day, and there were experts on, agents and publicity men, who were saying how hard it is to get started. Agents won't read any newcomers' work. Publicity, PR men won't talk to them. Publishers won't take anything over the transom, that is, something submitted without an agent. And the whole feeling of it was so pessimistic. And everything they said was true. It is impossible to break into any forms of the medium as a writer, but someone does it every day. So why shouldn't it be you? If you want to do it, you stay with it and you'll do it if you have the talent.
What do you think publishers are looking for? A new, fresh idea, or just a good, thorough writer?
I don't think they care if it's a fresh idea. They're looking for bestsellers, and that's unfortunate because there's no room now for a middle novel or a middle movie or a middle television show. Len Goldberg can tell you that unless you have an immediate hit, the networks pull it or the studios pull it, they won't back it. So there's no chance for the young people to learn today, and it's the same with books. They will publish a new book. If it is an immediate runaway, then they'll get behind it with publicity and so on. But if it doesn't take off right away, it's gone.
Yeah. Do you write aiming at these certain audiences? Do your publishers ask you to write for, for example, women 18 to 24? Something
His
like that.
publishers aren't allowed to ask him anything.
No,
Yeah.
I write for women 18 to 18 and a half. Beyond that, I don't believe in that. No, if people say, how do you write a bestseller? The answer is very simple. I don't know how you write a bestseller. If I sit down and say, now I'm going to write another bestseller, what I'm really saying is, now I'm going to look for a book that's going to please everybody. I'm going to look for the lowest common denominator. And when you set out to please everybody, I think you wind up pleasing nobody.
That's true.
Because the people who read my books, they sell in quite a few millions in 30 countries. Okay, we're talking about college professors, truck drivers, housewives, surgeons, janitors. I mean, how do you say, I'm going to get an idea that's going to please them? You can't do that. What I do, and what every writer should do, is to try to get an idea that pleases myself.
Make their own style.
Right, and make it as exciting. I don't even look for style. I just write in a way that's natural to me. And I write as excitingly as I know how. And when I finish a first draft, which runs anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 pages, I go back to page 1 and I do a rewrite, complete rewrite that takes from 2 to 3 months. And when I finish that, I go back to page 1 again. And I do that for a year to a year and a half. I'll do up to a dozen rewrites, just making it as good as I know how.
That's incredible.
And the publisher sees it for the first time when I have finished all those rewrites and I feel it's ready to be published.
When you're first beginning to write, do you know the book from beginning to end? Or do you write with the initial idea and let it, form as you write?
No, I work in a strange way that I do not incidentally recommend to young writers. I don't start with any plot at all. I have no idea what the plot is. I start with a character. In the case of Rage of Angels, it was a woman who wanted to be a lawyer. In the case of my latest book, If Tomorrow Comes, I thought it'd be fun to write about a woman con artist who's wonderful at what she does. But each book is a character, and I dictate first drafts to my secretary. And as I start to dictate, the story begins to come to life. So at the end of every day, I read pages that she's typed where characters and situations exist that I didn't know were going to be there when I started that morning. So in a sense, I'm the reader as well as the writer. I think it is not a good idea for young writers to try that. I think they should have an outline so they don't get off the track.
Yeah, it's very hard, except for a writer of Sidney's caliber, to work without an outline. I think most writers, particularly beginning writers, should outline their story and know exactly where it's going, because otherwise they would get hopelessly lost and never get back to the main plot.
Have you two ever worked on any project together?
Yes, Len produced Heart to Heart on television.
Which Sidney created.
And Len was the executive at Screen Gems when I was doing I Dream of Jeannie over there. Did we do anything else together then?
No, I think I used to watch Sidney write, which is a fascinating thing. I used to come over. He would allow me to come over and watch him write a script because,
What an honor.
yeah, what he would do when he wrote a script is he would walk up and down in his office dictating the script to his secretary. He would never have the ability to look at what he wrote while he was talking it, and he would literally dictate an entire script in the time it takes to read an entire script. He would dictate it, and it would be over, and I would just marvel at that. He had a wonderful ability with characters and the ability to tell a story, which I guess has finally been fully realized in his novels, because it's great. But we had a lot of fun doing Heart to Heart. That was fun.
I want to talk about your new movie, which, when you wrote the book, did not do very well, right?
Which movie?
The Naked Face.
Oh, no, The Naked Face sold 3 copies.
Right.
My mother bought one, an aunt bought one, and a cousin bought one. It's a
funny.
new record in not selling books. But I had such a wonderful feeling of freedom writing that, because I didn't have stars saying to me, I can't read that line, you'll have to change. A director saying, we're not going to play it in the mountains, we're going to play it in a basement. I mean, all these people are collaborators, and you have 100 of them. The cameraman puts it through the prism of his lenses, and the musicians put it through the prism. They create the moods with their music. All these people are collaborators. When you write a novel, there is nobody. There's just you and eventually the reader. And that's a marvelous feeling. And I enjoyed it so much that I sat down to write a second book with no more expectation that it would be any more financially rewarding than The Naked Face was. And the second book I called The Other Side of Midnight, and it literally changed my life.
Good thing you wrote that second book.
Yes, it's such a wonderful career change, because I find writing novels so exciting for me. To date, The Other Side of Midnight has sold over 7 million copies in this country, and it's in 30 other countries.
How much control did you have, or do you have, over when they base a miniseries or a movie on your novels, about how accurately that they are to the story?
Well, after the first couple of movies that were made, I wasn't too happy with them, so I decided I had to go back and get involved to a degree in production. So I am now executive producer on all the miniseries that I do. And the only degree of responsibility I want is being involved mainly in the script. The network will give me a choice of writers, and I will select a writer. I will read all those scripts and make suggestions to whoever the writer is, because I won't write them. And they discuss casting with me, and director and so on. But because I'm executive producer as opposed to being on the line producer, which necessitates being there every day, I'm able to simultaneously work on a new novel. So I really have the best of both worlds.
So you've been happy with how they've portrayed your novels in the past?
Yes, after starting with Rage of Angels.
Aren't they doing another? They're doing a sequel to Rage of Angels on television.
At the moment, they're doing Rage of Angels 2 as a miniseries. They're doing A Stranger in the Mirror as a miniseries. They're doing If Tomorrow Comes as a miniseries, and they've just finished a motion picture, theatrical motion picture, with Roger Moore and a wonderful cast of The Naked Face.
Did you pick Roger Moore personally for that?
Yes, Roger and I have been talking about that project for 15 years, and it finally got made.
How did you, going back, a lot, how did you come up with the concept for I Dream of Jeannie? That's a very interesting show.
Incidentally, there was a 2-hour on last
They
week?
just, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But I heard it's
I was going
quite
to ask
good.
if you took part in that.
No,
also.
I had nothing to do with it. I was in South America. Bill Asher, the director, called me, and we didn't get to talk because I was out of the country.
It did quite well.
Yeah, so I understand.
Yeah.
How would I get the concept for that? It's hard to say how one gets a concept for anything, really. Ideas just come. I thought what interested me about that was the idea, the twist in it was that instead of Burl Ives coming out of a bottle or some enormous male genie, which has been the tradition from time immemorial, I thought it would be really fun to have a beautiful young genie come out of a bottle and say to a man, what can I do for you, master? And to make it further interesting, I chose a profession for the man where he couldn't afford to have a genie. If he was a businessman, it would have been wonderful and not much fun. But to have him in the military, where that thing was taboo and would have gotten him thrown out, gave it that extra fillip. So when I got the idea, it kind of evolved from that concept.
So I think you would say you enjoy writing novels because it gives you more of a freedom than
Right.
creating shows
Yes,
did
I
for
must
you?
say, when I did I Dream of Jeannie, the network gave me total freedom. It was NBC, and I had no problem. I created the show. I wrote all the scripts using sometimes different names because my name was on too much. It was a Sidney Sheldon production, copyrighted by Sidney
Then you
Sheldon.
used Neil Simon for a while, didn't you?
No, he doesn't need anybody. So it was fun to do. Today, I think television's a lot tougher.
Yeah, it is. I think if you would come back, it's very much more difficult. The networks are much more involved. Everything is done by a committee, you know, and they always say a committee made a camel. They started out to make a horse, and they wound up with a camel, and that's what happens all too often. They're not willing to let the creative people just go and do it. When they are, you can get something like Hill Street Blues, where they gave them a lot of freedom, but they don't give that too often. So I think Sidney's probably very right, because the novelist sits and creates whatever he wants to create and doesn't have to submit it to any committee for their approval or disapproval.
Well, now that you have that freedom, do you think they would maybe give you that same freedom if you wish to create a show?
If I went back to television and wanted to be actively involved, yes, I would get, I don't know how much freedom, but certainly a certain amount. How much freedom would I get, Lynn?
I think you would get a lot of freedom, more freedom than almost anybody working in the medium now. Whether they would give you total freedom, I'm not sure they would, but they would certainly, I mean, we try to get him back every so often into the medium.
Do you have a desire to do that at all?
No.
No?
No, because I love writing books so much. And there are problems with television. As Len is saying, the problems are that you have to get the approval of a lot of people. In addition to the network people, there are sponsors, and there are the people who look it over
Studio
for moral
people.
values,
Yeah.
and, you know, all that. I don't have any of that. So once in a while I get an idea and I'm tempted, but I say to myself, why do I want to get involved with all the problems when what I'm doing now is so satisfying and doesn't have any of those problems?
And through the miniseries, you do have some involvement
That's
in
right.
the
So
medium.
I peripherally do get involved in that way.
Now your daughter's following in your footsteps.
Yes. She writes under the name of Mary Daston. No, sorry. Her married name is Mary Daston. She writes under the name of Mary Sheldon. And she has written 4 novels, and she's a brilliant novelist.
How do you feel about her doing
Oh, I
that?
adore her. She's wonderful. She's a better writer than I am, and a great human being. We're very close.
Great. How do you, are your books based at all on people or personal experiences that you've had?
Not really. There is a theory for beginning writers. They always say, only write what you know about. Well, if I had followed that, I would be a murderer, a rapist, I'd be involved in incest, I'd burn down buildings. No, I think you have to have enough empathy toward other people to know how they would feel, to know how a murderer feels, for example. I write about there are murderers in my novels, but I must confess, never murdered anybody. But I understand the mind.
Certain network executives came close.
Well, a few of them have, yes. But I have, I know how a murderer would feel. And I know how women feel. I get a lot of fan mail. And women particularly will write and say that I'm the first male author they have read who really understands how a woman would feel and how she thinks and so on. And I'm very proud of that, because I think women are more interesting than men. I love writing about women. I think it's very important to really feel your characters are alive. They're very alive to me, and therefore I think they're alive to my reader. But I feel everything my characters feel. If they're in pain, I feel pain, or hunger, or joy.
Do you research them? That's very important, isn't it?
We miss him for years at a time when he's off. I mean, he will not say much about it. He will say something about it. But Sidney, one of the reasons that his books are so vivid is the fact that every street his characters have walked, so has Sidney. And you feel that you're there because he was there, and he walked that street and ate in that restaurant and went to that nightclub, and it feels real because it is real.
Always. If I write about a prison at Rikers Island or a meal at a restaurant in Singapore, I have been to that prison and I have eaten at that restaurant. I won't write about anything unless I've experienced it.
Can you tell us some more about your upcoming miniseries?
Which one?
Uh,
there are three of them
Rage
being
of
made now.
Angels.
Well, Rage of Angels, I hope Jacqueline Smith will be doing it. She's about to have a baby,
Yes, she is.
and she's interested in doing it. NBC is preparing A Stranger in the Mirror, which is a story of a comic in Hollywood. That's in preparation now. CBS is currently shooting. If tomorrow comes, it will be 7 hours, and they expect to have it on the air in February.
Which is fast.
Yeah, very fast. They're rushing it. They want to get in. You know about sweeps weeks when the ratings company like Nielsen takes the ratings. All the networks try to get what they think will be hot shows in at that time to get higher ratings. And CBS is going for sweeps weeks. To
Rage
have,
of Angels too, Sidney, who evolved the story? Were you?
Bob Joseph is producing it and writing. No, I'm executive producer, but he is doing all the creative work. And when he has a script for me, I will read it, go over it with him, and we'll talk about casting.
Does it follow the
and so on.
character where she left off in the first book?
Pretty much, yes. Pretty much. The attorney, Jennifer Parker.
I want to kind of change the subject here. I know many of your novels have been, as many things are now branded by the moral majority.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? I know you've had strong reactions to that.
Yes,
As
I
anybody
do fight
would.
censorship because I don't believe that anybody has the God-given right to tell other adults what they can read or see or think. And I fight them wherever I can. As a matter of fact, I'm picking up an award in Chicago next week from the American Library Association just for that. I was asked to
Great.
debate Jerry Falwell on Good Morning America.
Will you do that?
I went there, this is a couple of years ago, and nothing to do with me, but Jerry Falwell at the last minute couldn't make it. And they put a minister in from Abington, Virginia, who was trying to force the library in Abington not only to ban my books, but to give him the names of everyone who had taken out my books in the past. And I got on the air with him, and Norman Lear had said to me, whatever you do, don't lose your cool. And I never lose my cool. And within about 30 seconds, I was screaming at this man. I can't tell you how much I hated him. And at the end of the segment, the producer said, that was wonderful. I want you to come back. We'll give you more time. And I said, I never want to see this man again. Let Norman come in and do it.
What do you think it is that makes your book so popular, bestsellers?
Well, partly because I think, as I said, the characters are real. I try to put them in exciting situations that I feel are exciting. And I write what have been called page turners. At the end of a chapter, when people are ready to go to sleep, I try to construct my book so that they have to turn one more page and start the new chapter.
That's definitely what has to be done.
Yeah, I love books that you can't put down, and so I try to write books that you can't put down.
Was it your idea to turn your novels into miniseries?
No, people came to me and said they wanted to do it.
They offered him all this money, and Sidney thought, if they want to do it this badly, why, we might as well. I'll tell you something funny. My wife, who is an avid reader of Sidney's novels, always asks one thing when the new book comes out. She says, how thick is it? And she always hopes it is thicker and thicker because she hates to see the end coming up and there just being a few pages left. So she keeps wanting you to write thicker books, Sidney.
I'm going to work on that.
Will you?
Yes.
Are you two going to do anything in the future together?
I would love to, yes.
Yes, we've
like nothing
tried, and
more.
we've, thank you, I would love to as well. We've tried in the past, and we haven't been successful yet, but we'll keep trying, and we hope one day we respect each other and enjoy each other and have fun together, and that's, all you can ask for.
In the last couple of years, Len has done one of the most tasteful and successful television shows ever made, and one of the best pictures made. War Games was a movie, and Something About Amelia was a television show.
Thank you.
And they're just marvelous. Yes, I would like very much to work with them.
Now, you've worked with, TV, films, even Broadway stage.
Yes.
Is there anything that you prefer?
Books.
Yeah, you said that.
Books, yeah.
Which do you like better between movies and TV and
They're totally
stage?
different. Movies, you get to work with people. I've worked with Cary Grant and Judy Garland, Fred Astaire, Martin and Lewis, David Niven. You get to work with top directors. I've done 2 movies with Irving Berlin. I mean, you work with giants who will not work in television. That's a big advantage. You know that they're going to spend a lot of money. It'll be well done.
It'll take time.
Yeah. And the disadvantage is they will show the pictures in theater for 2 weeks, and they're gone. You'll see them again if they surface on cable 10 years later for a night or two. On television, you get an idea, and I see it on the air 10 weeks later, and if it's successful, it's on, as Jeannie was, or Heart to Heart, every week for 5 or 6 years. So that's kind of fun.
And then it goes into syndication for another
And it's
10
on, yeah.
years.
Right now, they're both on, Jeannie and Heart to Heart,
Yes.
every day, all over the world. When I go to Europe or to South America, Jeannie or Heart to Heart is either playing there, has just been there, or is just coming back.
How did you get together and come up with your concept for Heart to Heart?
Well, it was very interesting.
Yes.
Len was talking to one of the networks, and they said, you know, we want something very sophisticated and high gloss and something that's really fun with charming people. And Len said, you know, Sidney wrote a script about, 5 years before
Yes.
that for NBC, I think it was
CBS.
CBS, and CBS turned it down. It was never even shot as a pilot. And Len called me and said, could I look at that script? And I dug a copy up out of the files. I think it was the only one in existence.
It was.
Showed it to him, and he said, let's go. We showed it to ABC, and
And they
said,
bought it
"Let's
right
make
away."
Yeah.
Bought it
And that
right
was
away,
it.
and we cast Robert Wagner in it, and we were fortunate in that we talked about who would be the best man to play it. And we said Robert Wagner, and he accepted, because it's hard to find an American actor who has sophistication and style and so on.
But if Len hadn't remembered that script, it never would have gotten on the air.
Yeah.
It'd have been buried.
Are you going to continue writing?
I'm going to continue writing books until I drop dead or this hand won't hold a pen.
Great, great. I'm sure America will just love that.
Well, I will love it, and I hope people enjoy my
Do you
books.
do you see yourself going on to anything new?
Well, I'm working on a new novel now, and when I finish that, I have 3 more I want to get to.
How about any more TV, creating shows, movies?
No, I don't think I would do it. If Len came to me with an exciting idea, I might
That
create
he had
something.
written 6 years ago. Then we were-
Right.
Well, thank you very much both for being my guests. You guys are both very great men, and it was an honor to have you.
It was a pleasure being
Pleasure
here.
to
Thank
be
you.
here. Thank
That's
you,
it
Jennifer.
for Hollywood Works. My name is Jennifer Kurt. Watch again. Thanks.